Although this is not the most exciting topic to talk about, it's probably one of the most important. It's backing up your data in Home Assistant in case you have a massive failure and you need to recover. I'm going to talk about an additional option you have to configure backups in Home Assistant, and it's an integration that comes from Hacks called Auto Backup. So let's dig right into that, and I'll show you how that works and how to set it up. I've covered backing up Home Assistant in the past using Google Drive as an option, Dropbox at one point, which I don't think is available anymore, and then, or the integration for Dropbox, and then also Samba Backup. I'm using Samba Backup now, but I ran across the Auto Backup in the Hacks repository as probably one of the top downloaded integrations in Hacks. So I figured I would give it a shot, and that's where I'm coming from today. I think it has some additional functionality that the others don't, and so I'm going to show that to you. Now, Home Assistant does have a backup option that you can set up, and you can create the backup by clicking on this right here, and you can do a full or a partial backup. If you want to do a partial backup, you have all of these options. What it doesn't give you the ability to do, though, is to be able to create a backup and then later on remove it once it's expired, or give you the option to easily exclude folders or media, or folders or add-ons. Now, you can create a partial backup by clicking all of these that you do want to back up, and by omission, you don't back up the things that you don't. So that is a way to exclude it, but it's not as simple as saying exclude specific things. And that's where Auto Backup comes into play. Before getting into how to install it, I'm going to talk a little bit about some of the features in Auto Backup. It provides more advanced configurable service calls. Those are called actions now in Home Assistant. Exclude add-ons and folders from a backup. Automatically delete the backups after a specified amount of time. That's something that Home Assistant doesn't give you the option to do. And like I said, you can also exclude by omission, but there's not a specific exclude option in Home Assistant. You can back up to custom locations, even network storage. You can download backups to a specific directory after it's completed. So you can create the backup and then download it somewhere. It allows the use of add-on names instead of just the slugs. The slugs are those funny character combinations. Add-on names are obviously the names of the add-on, so it's easier to keep up with. You get a sensor to monitor the status of your backups, creates events when the backups are started, created, failed, or deleted, and then supports generational backups. That's one thing that none of the backup options I've seen so far have. And that's interesting because it allows you to create long-term backups without using a lot of space. Now I want to talk about installing. It's very simple to install this. You can install it via Hacks, the Home Assistant Community Store. If you don't know what that is, I have a video, in fact, a recent video, as of this filming anyway, of Hacks 2.0, which gives you a completely different interface and a lot easier way to find things and install and keep up with them. If you don't know how to use Hacks or haven't used Hacks before, watch my video, which I've got linked down below, and that will tell you how to install Hacks and give you some general idea of what it is and where to find things. You can also click this Add Integration to My Home Assistant button. I have done that before, and it will open up a thing for you here and allow you to do that. I prefer the manual method in most cases, and by doing the manual method, you go over to Home Assistant, you go to the Home Assistant Community Store, so I'll just go to Hacks right here. And by the way, I'm using the C key on my keyboard as a shortcut. If you hit the C key on your keyboard, you get a nice pop-up that you can search. You can also hit the E key on your entity or on your keyboard and search for entities. So either way, it's a shortcut. There's a lot of different ways in Hacks to find things. The easiest way, since I know what I'm looking for, is to type in Auto Backup. And here is Auto Backup right here. I just want to click the three dots here, click on Download. It's going to come up here and tell me what version I'm going to download, where it's going to be put. And then it reminds me that I need to restart Home Assistant before my integration will be fully installed. You can also choose different versions if you want to choose a different release, and it gives you all the release versions and all of the or the time frame it was released. I'm going to go with the latest version. That's fine. Click on Download here. And like I said, One thing that will happen is you'll notice that it switches to pending restart instead of available for download here. So now you need to restart Home Assistant. So we'll go over to our settings and click on this button here, and we'll restart Home Assistant, and we'll come back when that is fully restarted. Remember, it's going to be a full restart, not a quick reload. So do that and then come back. All right, Home Assistant is starting back up again, as you can see through all the little pop-ups right here. Wait for all of this stuff to complete. And there's another step you're going to want to do after you do the HAX installation, the integration installation. You need to tie that to Home Assistant. And all of that is done via the Home Assistant's integrations page, not the HAX integrations, the Home Assistant integrations. All right, Home Assistant has started. So we are ready to go to our integrations page. Again, you can hit the C key for a shortcut, navigate to integrations. And you're going to click on this little button down here called Add Integration. And once again, since we know what we're looking for, we'll just start typing Auto Backup. And you should see it pop up here. If for some reason you don't see this pop up, you need to do a hard refresh of your browser, clear the cache or whatever. But you will click on this here. And again, this ties the HAX integration to Home Assistant. It's kind of the glue that puts everything together. It's going to tell you that it tells you what it does. Essentially, you just submit it. And it'll ask you to create an area for it if you want to. This is a backup in Home Assistant, so I'm going to leave it blank. And I'm going to click on Finish. And now you'll see you have Auto Backup here under your integrations. Now you can click on this, and you're only going to have two options to configure underneath this. Click on the Configure button, and these two options are automatically deleting expired backups. Highly recommended. Otherwise, you're going to fill up your storage device with backups. And then the backup timeout is defaulted to 20 minutes. The reason that is the case, if you look under the configuration options here on this page, you'll notice that they say that you can increase the backup timeout if you get errors in creating a backup. This happens if you have large backups. One thing to note, though, is increasing this might make the auto backup less reliable at monitoring backups to delete. So it has to complete the backup and then go back and check to see if there's anything to delete. If it takes too long to run backups, it may miss some of the backups that need to be deleted. I would highly recommend leaving this alone unless you are running into timeout errors with your backups. All right, so that is now installed, and then we have the configuration. I'll just leave that alone. Now, in order to use auto backup, you're going to create automations. Nothing happens in auto backup unless you tell it to. So the automations are key to making sure that it does what you want it to do. Well, first of all, let's just look at some services here. This is the auto backup, and services are the core of auto backup. They're the only methods, like I said, to allow auto backup to do anything. These are now called actions in Home Assistant. But anyway, there are some examples here they give you under the Services tab. Create a full backup, and you can see here it's just the action part of this. It doesn't have the settings for the automation or the other pieces. Partial backup allows you to do the partial backup. You can include folders, only a specific folder. You can create an empty partial backup with nothing in it, which I don't know why. And then you can do the exclusions and everything else. We're going to do all of this through the Home Assistant Automation UI, so don't worry about that here. When you get into generational backups and a little more complicated backups, then you'll have to do some YAML. Add on folders and names. Now, one of the benefits of doing auto backup is that the names are case insensitive and can be the add-on a name title. They're the same names the same as the names you see when you create a partial backup through the supervisor backups page. They can also be the slug, which must be lowercase, and you can use wildcards for matching slugs, such as core, underscore, asterisk to include all the core add-ons, etc. Folder names are also case insensitive and use the names seen when creating a partial backup. These are the accepted values, SSL share media add-ons or local add-ons, etc. And then, of course, the keep days allows you to specify how long to keep a backup before being deleted. The default is forever. You probably don't want to do that because you're going to fill up your storage device. Specify a float value to keep for days. For example, if you want to keep a backup for only 12 hours, you can use half a day or 0.5. You can create custom backup locations in Home Assistant, going to Settings, System, Storage, and clicking the Add Network button. So let's just do that. We'll go to Settings, System, Storage, and then you can create network storage down here. And you can choose these from your drop down in the automation when we get there in a second to actually store this. All right, so let's go create a quick automation for doing a backup. By the way, I'll link this whole page to, or in the description, you can go back and read all of this stuff. There's a lot of good useful information in here. All right, so I'm going to create an automation. And of course, that means, that means clicking that button right there. All right, and then we will create a new automation. It's going to be a blank automation. So I'm going to add a trigger, and the trigger is going to be time. So the time will be, let's say 2 a.m. And then the action is going to be the auto backup. So you can search for auto backup here in your actions, and you can choose some partial or full backups. You can purge expired. You can do a full backup or a partial backup. So I'm going to do a full backup. Actually, let's do this one. Auto backup. And what we have the option to do here is give it a name, but I'll leave that alone. I want it to make the name the way it wants to. I have a list of included add-ons, and I have a list of excluded add-ons. And then I can do the sending of folders. Actually, what I'm going to go back over here and do is I'm going to remove this action, and I'm going to create a full backup. Because what you'll notice when I do this is you'll see create a full or partial backup, create a partial or full backup with optional exclusions. It pre-fills in some things for you automatically, right? So now what I have is a fewer set of options, which makes it easier to configure to start with. Again, the name is optional. These are the excludes that it wants to get rid of. So no database, the local add-ons, and share. And I'm going to also exclude media. I don't need to back up all of my media. A lot of times my media will contain my NVR, my Frigate NVR, camera clips. It might contain songs. It might contain a bunch of things I don't necessarily need to back up. It creates a larger backup set if you include that folder. So I by default, get rid of that one. You can add a password to secure the backup. The number of days to keep, remember, it's defaulted to forever. I want to keep 7 days of backups. And for the location, I can use the data disk, or I can use the network share. So I'm going to use the network share for the backup. And then the download path, locations to download the backup after creation. I'm not going to download it to any other place after creation. That's useful if you save it to the local data disk and then you want to send it somewhere else. You have to pre-configure that, and it's in the documentation on the auto backup page. You can read about it there. But that's useful if you want to get it off the data disk or make a copy off the device. I am a firm believer in making off-site or off-device backups, because if your device crashes and you have all your backups on there, you may or may not be able to get to those. So setting it to a network share, such as my Synology NAS, allows it to back up off the device, and then it's available to me to restore later. I would always recommend going compressed here. So you just tick that on. It's by default compressed. That way it saves storage space as well. All right, so at 2 a.m. it's going to do that. We can look at this in YAML if you really are a YAML person. Essentially, you're going to trigger it at 2 a.m. It's going to run this action, the auto backup full, with exclusions for MariaDB add-on, and then all of these folders, compress it, keep 7 days, and it's going to go to Synology for the backup location. And then all you do is save it. So you click on the little save button right here, give it a new name, auto backup full with exclusions. Name it whatever you want, doesn't matter. Save it there. And now back in your automations, you will see your automation, and then next time it runs will be 2 a.m. Now you can run it right now by clicking the run button over here, and then you'll be able to test to make sure it works the way it's supposed to. I would also recommend that you run it that way, even if you set it for 2 a.m., because you don't want a backup to be running at 2 a.m. while you're sleeping and never realize it ran correctly. So something like this, set it up, run it, and make sure it works the way it's supposed to the first time around. And remember, whenever I chose the different types of auto backup actions, it gave me different list of options. You can always go, by the way, to developer tools. If I get to the right screen here, developer tools. And you can go to actions and you can find that action under here. So auto backup. If you're curious what these different things look like, so for example, auto backup purge, there's actually no configuration for that. It would just purge expired. But if you were curious about some of the other options for these other ones, auto backup full, let's do a partial. Again, here's your options that it would present to you. This is the same view you would get in the automation. It just gives you an option to do it here. You can also set this up in this actions under developer tools and run it directly from here. You can see that you can perform the action from right here and see how it works. And if it works for you, then you could actually even go to YAML mode and take the data here and put it in your action section of your automation. So another way to set this up and play around with it. All right, so I want to talk about generational backups. I will go over here to advanced examples and talk about it from their perspective. There is a blueprint for the generational backups. You can import the blueprint, and maybe this is a recommended way to do that. You can also search for it. Easier for blueprints, it's easier to import them this way than it is to do it the manual way, because you have to go add the blueprint repo and everything. All right, so open the link there. And now what you'll see is you'll see the blueprint for automatic backups. You can preview it if you want to. This is like any other blueprint you would import. You look through all the settings here. So then you would import the blueprint. Now, if I want to create an automation for this, I can find the auto backup. And that's this right here. And you can come over here and create an automation from that. And what you have options for here are creating backups each day and keep them for a configured amount of time. Backups are stored less frequently the older they are. That's generational backups. So you can go in here and set the name template used for the backups. I'll leave that alone. Backup password optional again. You can enable hourly backups. If you're doing a lot of updates on your Home Assistant instance and you're changing it regularly, you might want to do hourly backups. So you could enable that there. You want to do daily backups. So create a daily backup each day and store for a week. Create a weekly backup and store for a month, and then create a monthly backup and store for a year. And then you can create a backup each year and store forever. This gives you a very easy way to use the generational backup option in this for this auto backup integration. And then your backup action, optionally override the built-in backup action with a custom action. Gives you greater control over what's included. By default, this only overrides the 3-hour backups. So they only include configuration. So you can play around with that one as well. I'm going to leave it alone. And then you can add additional conditions to run before it runs. And then you just save it. And I'm going to just say generational and rename it, I guess. And now I have an automation in here. I hope. Let me go to my automations. It should be in here. Yep, here's my automational backups generational. But anyway, auto backup is a very interesting tool to allow you to create backups and control them just exactly the way you want to. Then one other thing I do want to mention, if I can find it in here, if we go to, and I'm going to show you on my test setup here. If I go to developer tools, I'm going to look for auto backup. There is an auto backup sensor that is created. You could put on a dashboard. So right now we have 2 monitor backups, 0 purgeable, and that would change based on your settings. It would give you a good idea of how much stuff is in there. You could share these out or show these attributes on a dashboard and see the current state of your dash or your backups. And it would show you 17 hours ago, it would show you have 1 backup yesterday or whatever. So anyway, there is a sensor. So that is the auto backup integration in Hacks, a very nice tool allowing you to control your backups in Home Assistant. Doesn't matter what tool you use, though, you need to back up your Home Assistant instance. You spent countless hours building out your automations, making everything work the way you want to. The last thing you want to do is lose all of that. So off-device backup is best, but if you can't do that, at least back it up so you can at least restore it if you make a configuration or some other issue error. All right. Thanks for watching. Thanks for supporting me. And if you got this far and you haven't subscribed, hit that button. And that will help a long ways to the algorithm and all the yada yada there. So we'll see you on the next video.